When I regained consciousness, I found myself standing at the entrance of Night Bar. In my previous life, I was at home working on my thesis when Emily's father called. He said Emily had gone out again and asked me to bring her back. I genuinely liked Emily and didn't want to see her go astray, so I went to find her. It was this moment of softness that led to the demise of my parents and myself.
Emily, we need to get out of here. Your parents are worried.
Who do you think you are? What right do you have to control me?
Emily, your parents are very worried about you. Please come back with me.
They didn't come looking for me. Why are you here? You're not anyone to me.
Even though we're not married, it's still my responsibility to take care of you.
Emily suddenly burst into laughter.
Michael, do you know what I hate the most about you? It's your pretentious concern, acting like you really care about me. But in reality, you're just like my parents, nagging about everything. Now that I've finally gotten into college as you wished, why do you still want to control me?
No. It's not like that, Emily.
It was at this moment that the fateful call came. The person on the other end said they had John and demanded that Emily bring 500,000 yuan to ransom him, emphasizing that she shouldn't call the police. Last time, I stopped Emily, telling her not to take the risk and to let the police handle it. John was harmed by the captors, and Emily hated me ever since. To get back at me, she pretended to marry me and conspired with her lover to take over my family's assets. She orchestrated a fire that took my parents' lives and a car accident that left me bedridden. Before disconnecting my oxygen, she said,
Michael, this is what you owe John. If you hadn't stopped me from saving him, you wouldn't be in this situation. Blame yourself for meddling.
The memory ended abruptly, and this time I chose to watch coldly. As I turned to leave, I saw Emily running out of the bar, looking anxious. She must have received that call. Our eyes met unexpectedly, and her gaze warned me not to interfere. Of course, I had no intention of doing so. If she insisted on making reckless choices, I wouldn't stop her.
Michael, what are you doing here?
Just passing by.
Aren't you concerned about what I'm going to do?
That's your business. I'm not anyone to you, so I have no right to interfere.
But John has been taken, and I need to rescue him alone.
Was she hoping I would stop her? Didn't she claim to love John deeply? I genuinely thought Emily would do anything for him, especially since she had caused my family's downfall in the previous life for John's sake. I didn't expect her to hesitate now.
It has nothing to do with me.
After saying this, I walked away, only hearing Emily cursing behind me. This time, I didn't stop her. I didn't care about her anymore. I just hoped the tragic events of the past wouldn't repeat themselves. When I got home, my parents were waiting for me.
Son, I made you some noodles. You must be hungry.
Michael, did you go looking for Emily again? It's my fault. I was too young and agreed to your childhood engagement on a whim. But you two haven't officially gone through the process, so it doesn't count. If you don't want it, I can go and clear things up.
Seeing my parents, who cared so much for me, and thinking about their fate in the previous life, I couldn't help but shed tears.
What's wrong, son? Did Emily give you a hard time again?
My parents quickly came over to hug me.
No, Mom and Dad, I'm fine. I've thought it through. I won't go looking for Emily and bring trouble upon myself anymore.
Hearing my words, my parents beamed with joy.
It's good that you've thought it through, Michael. We were heartbroken seeing you suffer every day, but we were afraid you couldn't let go. Now that you've figured it out, it's great. Our son is so kind and excellent, you'll find an equally wonderful partner in the future.
Their laughter echoed in the living room, and I couldn't help but immerse myself in this happy atmosphere. In the middle of the night, my parents suddenly woke me up.
What's wrong, Mom and Dad?
Get dressed quickly. We need to go to the hospital. Something happened to Emily.
Although I expected it, my parents' expressions were very serious. As soon as we reached the emergency room, someone rushed up and punched me hard. People around us gasped and quickly pulled the person away. It was then that I saw it was Emily's brother, David.
Are you okay, son?
I'm fine.
David, what are you doing? Why did you hit him?
Emily is lying in there. Where was Michael? Why didn't he protect her?
Why should I protect her all the time? Just because of a childhood engagement our parents joked about?
Hearing my words, David seemed even angrier and wanted to hit me again, but Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith held him back.
Emily is in this state because of you. Do you know she was mistreated by several people?
As soon as those words were spoken, the room fell silent. Mrs. Smith could be heard softly sobbing in the corner.
Yes, she has had a tough time, but wasn't it her own choice? How many times did I try to talk her out of hanging around with John?
Michael's voice trembled with pent-up emotion.
Once, I went to the bar to bring her home, and she said in front of everyone that I was just a dog following her around, coming and going at her command. She watched as John and his friends roughed me up and threw me out of the bar, and she just said, "It's just a dog." Even if it left, I wouldn't give it another look. David, you're a man too. Tell me, what else could I have done?
David didn't say another word, his eyes red as he sat back down. Mom looked at Michael, tears silently streaming down her face, and Dad couldn't help but speak to Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Mr. Smith, we've been friends for many years. We sympathize with Emily's situation, but she and Michael are not meant to be. Let's put an end to the childhood engagement we once joked about.
Mr. Smith sighed repeatedly.
It's Emily who wronged Michael. Don't worry, Mr. Johnson. We won't use this to pressure Michael. We wish him happiness.
They stayed until the early hours, leaving the hospital only after Emily was out of danger. Seeing her lying on the hospital bed, pale-faced, Michael felt no pity.
Emily, will you regret it when you wake up? Where is your beloved John now that something so serious has happened?
Emily remained unconscious for a long time. During this time, Michael returned to school to attend his graduation defense. He didn't expect the news of Emily's incident to spread so quickly. The whole school was talking about the junior art student who had been humiliated.
For someone who cares so much about her reputation, I wonder how she'll stay in school after this.
After his defense, as he was about to drive away from school, a small accident occurred.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry. I accidentally scratched your car.
The girl speaking had fair skin, a delicate voice, and dimples when she smiled. Michael was momentarily stunned.
It's nothing, just a small scratch. It doesn't matter.
But that's not right. If I did something wrong, I should take responsibility. I can pay.
How about this, since we met by chance, you can treat me to a cup of milk tea, and we'll call it even.
Her frown finally eased.
All right. I happen to work at a milk tea shop. Let's go, my treat.
And that's how Michael met Sarah. She was kind and pure, though her family wasn't well off, and she had a younger brother. Her parents didn't care about her, so she had to work part-time to support herself. They exchanged WeChat contacts, and Michael told her she could reach out to him if she ever needed help, but she just smiled and didn't say much. After a period of relaxed and carefree days, Emily finally woke up. Michael went to the hospital to see her as soon as he could.
Why are you here?
Since it was just the two of them in the room, Michael didn't hide his intentions.
I'm here to watch your show, of course.
Emily furrowed her brows. I could tell she wanted to lose her temper, but she was too weak to do so.
I advise you not to get angry. Your body can't handle the strain right now.
What nonsense are you talking about? My mom told me it's just a minor injury, and I'll be fine after some rest.
Oh? Really? Why don't you lift the blanket and see for yourself?
Emily slowly lifted the blanket, and when she saw the artificial colostomy bag on her abdomen, she let out a piercing scream.
No way! What happened to me? This can't be true.
You'll have to live with this for the rest of your life.
I don't believe you. You're lying to me. Michael, you're just trying to deceive me.
Believe it or not, the fact remains. By the way, where's John, the one you risked everything to save? Why isn't he here to protect you?
It was you. It must have been you. What did you do to John?
Emily, you're so naive. I offered you my sincere heart, but you chose to be played by others. Your beloved John is now behind bars.
What? No, that's not true. John isn't like that.
When you're discharged, you can visit him in prison and see if I'm lying.
After hearing this, Emily seemed to resign herself to fate and began to cry loudly.
Why? Why didn't you stop me? If you had stopped me, none of this would have happened.
It's hard to advise someone determined to make a mistake. If I had stopped you, who knows if I would have been the one in trouble instead. Emily, I've done my best for you. This is all you're doing.
Recalling the tragic end in my previous life, I closed my eyes briefly. Last time, I stopped Emily and John's accomplices, thinking he had betrayed them, got into a conflict that led to John's accidental demise. But no matter what the truth was, it couldn't be blamed on me. I looked coldly at the hysterical Emily and turned to leave the hospital room. Unexpectedly, I ran into David, who had come to visit Emily. Seeing Emily's condition, David got furious and threw a punch at me. I caught his fist with my left hand and swung my right hand at his face, causing blood to seep from the corner of his mouth.
An eye for an eye. This is payback for last time.
With that, I left without looking back. After a period of relative peace, Sarah unexpectedly sought me out. He always took the initiative to reach out to her. She never did, responding only with polite, brief replies. Today, she seemed to be in need.
Michael, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I might need your help with something.
Go ahead, I'll do my best to help you.
She hesitated before speaking, clearly troubled.
It's like this, my brother got into some trouble, and our family urgently needs money. Could you lend me $10,000? I promise to pay you back as soon as possible.
No problem, just send me your bank account number, and I'll transfer it to you. Pay me back whenever you can, no rush.
He guessed her brother was in a predicament that required immediate funds.
Thank you, Michael. If you ever need my help, please don't hesitate to ask. I'll do my best to assist you.
How about this? I've just taken over the family business. When you don't have classes, come to my company and help out. Of course, I'll pay you for your work.
Sarah was momentarily stunned, but then quickly nodded in agreement. Over time, their bond grew stronger. One day, Michael decided to confess his feelings.
Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. I have feelings for you.
Michael, you know, my family isn't well off. How could I be worthy of you?
He didn't expect the confident girl to show such timidity.
Sarah, I'm not someone who cares about money and power. To me, as long as I'm happy and content with you, that's enough.
Emily's shadow still loomed over him, but he hoped for a kind and lovely partner. Sarah tearfully accepted his confession. Not long after, Michael brought Sarah home to meet his parents. They were very fond of her, urging them to marry after she graduated.
Michael, next week is your Uncle Smith's birthday. Bring Sarah along for dinner.
He hesitated, knowing his mom had ulterior motives. However, Sarah was understanding.
Michael, it's only right to meet your relatives and friends. I won't mind the past.
The birthday party took an unexpected turn. On Mr. Smith's birthday, they prepared early for the banquet. Michael was amazed by Sarah's appearance.
What's wrong? Do I not look good?
No, it's just that you look like a young lady from a wealthy family.
Sarah blushed shyly. At the Smith residence, the first person they saw was David, greeting guests in hall. He glanced at Michael coldly, then at Sarah. Suddenly, David froze, his eyes filled with disbelief and shock. Michael realized why Sarah had always seemed so familiar. She bore a striking resemblance to David. Just then, Mr. and Mrs. Smith approached. Mrs. Smith suddenly grabbed Sarah's hand, turning her wrist over to reveal a small red mole.
Child. You are my child. My daughter.
She began to cry loudly, embracing Sarah tightly. Sarah seemed startled, and I immediately held her hand to comfort her. The crowd around us began to stir, trying to figure out what was happening. It was at this moment that Emily appeared. She was wearing a loose white dress, and her delicate makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. She surveyed the scene before her and suddenly rushed towards us, pulling Mrs. Smith away and attempting to push Sarah down. However, I firmly protected Sarah, preventing Emily from succeeding.
Don't touch her.
I couldn't help but scold.
Mom, what are you doing? I'm your daughter, Emily. Look closely.
The situation spiraled out of control, and Mr. Smith had to escort David to send the guests away before coming back to end the farce. After a long while, we all finally sat down calmly. Mrs. Smith, with tears in her eyes, held Sarah's hand and spoke.
I clearly remember when I gave birth, I saw a small, barely noticeable red birthmark on her wrist. But I was too exhausted and passed out. When I woke up, the birthmark was gone. I asked the nurse, but she told me there was no birthmark and that I must have been hallucinating. So, I dismissed my doubts.
Mrs. Smith paused to collect herself before continuing.
But gradually, as Emily grew up, I noticed she didn't resemble Mr. Smith or me. Her personality was completely different too. Mr. Smith and I are both gentle people, and we spoiled David too much, making him reckless. So we were strict with Emily from a young age, but she still turned out this way. Over time, I increasingly suspected that Emily wasn't our biological daughter. This thought weighed heavily on my mind. In the dead of night, that small red birthmark would always appear in my dreams. Finally, when I saw you today, all my doubts vanished. I'm certain, Sarah, you are my biological daughter.
As soon as Mrs. Smith finished speaking, everyone fell silent. Sarah was too shocked to speak. Instead, Emily suddenly jumped up, screaming, pulling everyone back to reality.
I don't believe it. It's impossible. I'm your daughter, Mom. How could it be her? She looks like a poor girl from a lowly family.
Shut up. Who gave you the right to speak about Sarah like that?
David couldn't help but speak up.
Mom, Emily is my sister. How can you say this stranger is?
Enough. We'll go to the hospital for a DNA test tomorrow. Everything will be clear then.
Before I left the Smith residence with Sarah, Mrs. Smith earnestly requested her to stay. But seeing Emily's hostile gaze, I decided to take Sarah away. The next day, we all went to the hospital for a DNA test. The results were as I expected. Sarah was indeed the Smith's biological daughter, and Emily was an imposter. Upon learning the results, Mrs. Smith hugged Sarah tightly, crying.
My daughter has suffered so much.
Sarah also shed tears. Thinking about the hardships she endured with her adoptive parents, my heart ached for her. I thought Emily would cause trouble, but she just stared at the test results in shock, not saying a word.
It's okay.
Under David's strong insistence, Emily eventually followed them back to the Smith household.
I originally intended to help Sarah seek justice at the Johnson household, but unexpectedly, they came to us first.
Bah, you ungrateful brat. If it weren't for us raising you, you wouldn't even be alive today.
I stood in front of Sarah, shielding her.
If you want to dig deeper, switching two children without consent is a serious offense. Go ahead and make a scene. We'll see you in court.
Mrs. Johnson fell silent, fear evident in her eyes.
Sarah, you know it wasn't easy for your mother and me to raise you. Shouldn't your family give us some compensation?
Sarah's eyes reddened with anger.
You raised me, but did you ever fulfill your duties as parents? If I hadn't been suspicious back then, you would have torn up my college acceptance letter. How would I have found my biological parents? You even tried to marry me off to an old man to pay off Charles's gambling debts. I remember every single thing clearly. The $100,000 you owe for Charles's debts, consider it settled. I've returned to my real family, and I ask you to leave me alone and not disturb my new life.
I hugged Sarah tightly, and she whispered softly to me.
Thank you, Michael.
I thought that once Sarah returned to the Smith household, Mr. and Mrs. Smith would protect her. But when they weren't around, David allowed Emily to bully her. When I arrived at the Smith household, the first thing I saw was Sarah, soaking wet.
What did you do to her?
She was too stupid to even use the water heater.
David joined in the mocking. I was about to lose my temper when Sarah tugged at my sleeve.
Let it go, Michael. I'm fine.
Seeing that she didn't want to escalate the situation, I escorted her back to her room. As I was about to go downstairs, I saw Emily and David embracing each other intimately. I narrowed my eyes, a plan forming in my mind. If you truly love each other, then I'll help you out. The next time I visited the Smith household, I witnessed quite a scene between Emily and David.
You ungrateful child. What have you done?
David, shirtless, knelt on the ground.
Dad, Emily, and I truly love each other. Please, let us be together.
Emily, her clothes disheveled, stood by, sobbing quietly.
Get out. Both of you, get out. From now on, the Smith family has no son. Take Emily and leave as far as you can.
Sarah quickly stepped forward to console Mr. Smith.
Dad, please calm down. My brother and Emily were just confused. Don't harm your health over this.
Mr. Smith patted Sarah's head affectionately, his eyes filled with sorrow.
Sarah, from now on, you're my only daughter. All right, everyone leave. I need some time alone.
Not long after, Mr. Smith took Sarah to change her name officially to Sarah Smith. He also revised his will, leaving all the Smith family assets to her.
I never thought I'd end up with a hidden heiress. I hit the jackpot.
I thought we would never cross paths with Emily again, but after a long time, I saw David once more. It was Sarah's birthday, and after a day of shopping, we headed to a restaurant to celebrate. On the way, we ran into David. I intended to ignore him, but he glanced at Sarah and spoke.
Michael, long time no see.
David's tone was weary. I took a closer look at him. He wore ill-fitting sportswear, with frayed cuffs. His eyes were bloodshot, and his unkempt stubble showed he hadn't groomed in a while. I couldn't understand the man before me. He had given up his privileged life for so-called love and ended up like this. But I remember my past life, and I remembered Emily from that time. Those painful memories seemed distant now.
Do you regret it?
I asked Sarah to wait for me at the restaurant while I had a private conversation with David. David let out a bitter laugh.
What's the use of regret? I chose this path myself.
Emily didn't come with you?
She's expecting and resting at home. You know her health condition.
David took a deep drag from his cigarette.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say.
I apologize for what happened before. I was too reckless.
It's all in the past.
Actually, I regret it, Michael. Truly.
I didn't expect David to say that suddenly.
Emily and I went back to her biological parents' home. Her parents are very materialistic. When they first found out I was the young master of the Smith family, they treated me with all sorts of flattery. But once they learned I had been disowned and was penniless, they began to treat me coldly. She has a younger brother who owes money everywhere. They forced Emily to pay off his debts and even resorted to physical threats. I couldn't bear it, so I worked odd jobs to earn some money for them. I thought as long as Emily and I truly loved each other, we could get through the tough times. But she grew more and more resentful of me, blaming me repeatedly for not protecting her and causing her current suffering. But how could I not blame her? If it weren't for her, I would still be the wealthy young master of the Smith family.
David laughed self-deprecatingly.
Do you think I deserve this, Michael?
As you said, you chose this path. Take care of yourself.
Facing David, I really couldn't find any comforting words. After all, he and Emily were the ones who caused my demise in the previous life. When did I realize it? Probably when I found out that Sarah was the real daughter of the Smith family and recalled the mysterious man in Emily's WeChat contacts named Yan. The lover who conspired with Emily to end my life in the past life was David. Now, it seems they are getting there just deserts. Time flew by, and soon Sarah graduated from college. She took over the Smith family business, and I was delighted to see her growing more mature and steady.
Michael, let's get married.
I had originally planned to propose to her properly, but she beat me to it. I playfully tapped her nose with my finger.
All right, my dear Sarah.
The wedding was set for a good date 2 months later. Following Sarah's wishes, we had a traditional ceremony. With the bride in a red gown and the groom in a matching outfit, the celebration was grand and lively. I helped Sarah out of the wedding car and slowly walked her into the venue.
Are you hungry, my dear Sarah?
But she didn't respond. I thought she might be shy and said again,
It's okay. If you're hungry, we'll speed up the process so you can eat soon.
Strangely, there was still no response. Sensing something was wrong, I lifted her right hand and saw that her wrist, usually marked by a distinctive red mole, was bare. I immediately lifted her veil, and sure enough, it wasn't Sarah.
Miss me, Michael?
I pushed her away angrily.
What are you doing here? Where's Sarah?
Emily suddenly burst into laughter.
Ha ha ha! She's going to be gone! If I can't be the Smith family's daughter, neither can she! Ha ha ha!
I grabbed her by the collar, my emotions running high.
Where is she? Tell me now!
I won't tell you. Even if I lead this world, I won't tell you.
With that, Emily pushed me away and ran outside. Before long, she was standing on the rooftop of the hotel.
Don't come any closer, Michael. If I leave this world, you'll never see Sarah again.
Emily, don't do anything rash. You won't leave this world. Just tell me where Sarah is.
You only care about Sarah. Don't you know how much I love you?
I didn't know what she had been through, but I was sure Emily had lost her sanity. I could only go along with her.
I know. I care about you too.
You're lying. You don't care about me at all. Otherwise, how could you let our child be gone?
Emily's words became more and more irrational, and I started to panic.
Believe me, we can have another child. Just tell me where Sarah is, okay?
Sob, my child, I'm so sorry. Mommy will join you soon.
Seeing Emily about to jump, a voice suddenly stopped her.
Emily.
I turned around to see John standing behind me, but Emily became agitated upon seeing him.
It's you. You're the real culprit. You caused our child's accident.
John's face was filled with pain as he slowly approached Emily.
It's my fault. I didn't watch him properly, and he accidentally got hit by a car. It's all my fault. If anyone should leave this world, it should be me. Emily, come here, please.
Emily finally calmed down, and I seized the opportunity to ask again.
Do you remember where Sarah is?
Hearing that name, she suddenly became restless again, muttering.
Gift, gift.
Emily climbed along the edge of the rooftop, and John quickly jumped to stop her. But it was too late. With a loud thud, both of them hit the ground heavily, lifeless. Despair washed over me, and I collapsed to the ground. Emily was gone. What about Sarah? Wait, Emily kept mentioning a gift. I suddenly remembered seeing a large gift box at the hotel entrance before coming in. I rushed downstairs and opened the gift box, finding Sarah inside. She had passed out from lack of oxygen, and I immediately called 911. Fortunately, the doctor said she was found just in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been dire. Only after she was out of danger did I finally relax. I had almost lost her forever. I stayed by her side day and night until one morning, a familiar voice woke me up.
Michael.
I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face.
I'm so sorry, Sarah. I failed to protect you. I almost lost you.
It's okay, Michael. You've done great. I knew you would come to save me.
Sarah, let's never be apart. This life, the next, and the one after that. Let's be together forever.
All right, all right.